Are we good? Yes. Okay, then welcome everyone. Here we are at the Palm Springs United Methodist Church with a group of both the church community and Or Hamidbar to hear Rabbi Debi Shua Chaim's presentation on the Labyrinth and the Shofar. Debi grew up in Jerusalem in a lovely house with 4 other sisters. Happens to be my house. She's Sasha and my daughter. I think we need to turn off the sound on one of those. Yeah, you're going to get an echo. Okay. And we want to thank Madalena for doing the tech as always, and thank the church for giving us. Space. Debi grew up in Jerusalem, and she served as an educator in Australia after her army service, and she was also an educator in the army. And it's so funny, I'm not used to introducing anybody, but this is what's done. And Debi went to Hebrew University and studied in the Bible department there for her bachelor's and her master's degree, and also with an emphasis on educational philosophy, and went on to study at the Hebrew Union College, the Reform Movement's rabbinical campus in Jerusalem, the Israeli program, and was ordained 3 years ago, just now. It'll be almost exactly 3 years next month, was ordained as rabbi. She works in the capacity of an educator at the Bible Lands Museum, which for those who've been to Jerusalem, is right across the parking lot from the Israel Museum. It's based on a wonderful collection. She's an educator there. And she also does work with the Israeli Reform Movement. And in particular, she's kind of set up an organization to work with women who are pregnant and giving birth on that issue and the spirituality of that. And I hope I described that properly. And we're very proud that she's here to talk about this. Thank you, Debs.
Thank you so much, Abba, for your kind words, and thank you everyone for coming. I'm really, really excited for this. And as Rabbi David just said, my rabbinical thesis I wrote about spiritual preparation for childbirth and parenting. And my big question is, how do we, in that term of early parenting, how do we bring God into the labor room? How do we give people who do not necessarily have the spiritual tools because they are more affiliated with a secular kind of lifestyle? How do we give them tools to use everything that the Jewish and not only Jewish tradition has to give us? So what we're going to be doing today, every talk I give is never too far away from these issues, basically because of the very basic notion that everyone in this room was born. And that is what is common to all the human beings in the world. We all came from a womb at some point, whether we know the person that gave birth to us or not, whether it was biological or in some other way that we were born into a family, or just born into this world, if not everyone is connected to their original families. And we're going to be taking a voyage today from the day of the birth of the world, which is the first day of the Hebrew calendar, Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the year, through the Day of Atonement, in Hebrew called Yom Kippurim, the 10th day of the year, up until Hoshana Rabbah, which is the 22nd or 23rd day of the first month of the year. And we're going to try and look at 2 symbols and see how the physical symbol might offer us a spiritual way of looking at a path to getting to know ourselves, to coming back to our core, to getting to know our higher power. So the first symbol we're going to be looking at is this. This is it's called in Hebrew a shofar. We have 2 kinds here today. It's usually a ram's horn, but this is a kudu horn, right? And one of the first, the Jewish tradition is really based on asking questions, but also on not one right answer. So even after, when we talk about Jewish literature, we usually talk about the Hebrew Bible, okay? It's not one book. It's a library of books. It was compiled over hundreds of years. But at a certain point, it was edited. And this book was closed, okay? And from the 1st century BC, we're starting to talk about a different kind of literature. It's called the Mishnah, okay? And these are our sages living in the land of Israel in the first 2 centuries. We don't know exactly, it was probably all orally, but they compiled a codex of laws, Jewish laws, called the Mishnah. And one of the first
Debates?
One of the first ways of being a Jewish scholar and a Jewish sage is having a debate. Okay, there's the funny joke, right? If you have 2 Jews, you'll have 3 synagogues, because no one can make up their minds. And one of the debates, they know from the Bible that there's that we are obligated to blow the shofar, okay, to blow the horn on the day of the Tshuvah, of what do you say it? Yom Tshuvah.
Trumpet
sounding day, okay, that's originally the biblical sense. And one of the debates is whether this horn should be bent or straight, okay, shofar pashut or shofar kafuf. And I ask you, if you had to make a decision, what is the best way to connect to God? Would it be the bent way or the straight way? So if I can have one of each, who's for the straight way? You can put up your hand. Great. Pam, why the straight way?
Because I want the direct line to God. I don't want to twist and turn. I feel like my life is like that, and I'm always going on.
Okay, so you would want more like a trumpet-looking thing, you know, the straight way. Okay, is anyone for the bent way? Yeah, can you just say your name out loud?
Patty.
Patty.
Because God made the animal with the horn that way, and so he loves the animal.
Great. Any other?
Is there a straight shofar?
Well, that's a great question. I think that we don't see them, right? So you know who won, right, on that debate.
But you can find them though in a shofar store. There, the ibex, the ibex, has a straight horn.
But we usually see these. So who else was for the bent one? Yeah. Would you like to say? Yeah. Mm. Full of twisted turns. Great. You also wanted to say?
Actually, I had a question, but I think it's because the horn of the animal is that way, and so that's the way to God. My question was, at our services, the person who blew the shofar held it in a way that the opening was down. Was he just making a mistake, or can that be happening?
I don't remember any stipulation in the law whether
I'm not sure.
It makes sense. It should be up probably. I think
Yeah.
maybe nervous.
debate on that too.
Right, I'm sure. So coming back to this, of course, there were reasonings for both sides of the debate. And really what Pam was saying was that that side of the debate was saying the more straight the person is, the more straight way to God. But then the other side of the debate says, but the more bent the person is, the more humble they are. So that's another way to God. And I love this idea. And one of the new ideas that I acquired this year, actually, with one of the women that I've been accompanying in Jerusalem, is that in mystical Jewish literature from around the 16th century, one of the ideas is that the shofar actually is a symbol of a womb and the birthing canal. And that's not so far out to imagine that the womb widens itself, to have the fetus inside, but then the birthing canal is very, very small, and baby needs to squeeze itself out if it's birthing through the birthing canal, and if it's a C-section, then it's a different way. But I wasn't able to get an English translation for this, so I'll just say it very quickly. One of our sages, one of our Kabbalistic Jewish mystics, Chaim Vital, living in around the 16th century in Safat, in northern Israel, talks about the shofar being the vessel through which the High Mother, okay, because Jewish mystics don't only have a male God, they have male and female, I don't know if to call it deities, how do you say?
Deities, no.
Deities, but it's
I think versions or
versions
aspects.
or more like, it's more like a yin and yang kind of a thing, that they complete each other, and that the sound coming out of the shofar is like the sound that a birth would make. Now we need to remember that up until 200 years ago, when most women gave birth at home, everyone knew what labor sounded like, okay? As a young child, you knew what it sounded like. Again, depending on the tradition, depending on the culture. Some cultures had women aspire to shut their mouth during labor, but others, you knew what it sounded like. So he describes the blowing of the shofar and this whole motion as the big mother giving birth to the world. And imagine that. Imagine us. Do you know the Magic School Bus? It's a cartoon. So I don't know if you know it, but basically, you know, the science teacher, she shrinks everyone, and they go on the bus and they explore. So I imagine us, you know, going on the Magic School Bus and going into the shofar. And what I usually do with the kids when I come to school is I have all the kids whisper their wishes for their new year into this part. And then when I blow the shofar, all the wishes go up to the sky and open up the heavens to make all our wishes true. I don't know if it really comes true, but I'll have to ask them when I come back to school after the holidays. So this is one idea of an image that could be straight, but it could also be bent and, you know, in spiral. And I think this is also another idea, right? What happens, such a big part of Jewish tradition, and I think of any cultural tradition, is that we do the same thing every year, right? We read the Torah every year. We go around and we finish it once a year. We celebrate all the same holidays on the same date every year. The only thing that changes is us, right? We come different. At every time of the spiral, we're at a different place in our lives and we grow. So I'm one of those people who doesn't believe that we're on a linear path of life. I think it's a little more complicated than that. And the shofar gives me that. And we will be finishing our session today with blowing the shofar, so don't worry, you will not miss out on that. And we will be coming back to the shofar soon. Now I want us to look at a different symbol, which is the labyrinth. Now, what I want to say is that a lot of people confuse the labyrinth and the maze, okay? The maze is you have a way in, you do not know which way to turn, you have to make choices all the time where to go, and you don't know if you're going to find your way in or out or how you're going to be. The labyrinth is different because there's one entrance and you go on it and the path is very clear. It is winding. It's a winding path, but it's very, very clear. You cannot get lost, okay? You can be dizzy, you can get impatient, you can get frustrated, but you can't get lost. And then you get to the center and then you turn around and then you go back the same way, okay? And the doula that accompanied me in my births, she's a doula, and I'm also studying with her to be a doula and to prepare other women for childbirth. Her teacher, Pam England, which actually lives in New Mexico, uses the labyrinth as a symbol for childbirth. And it really is a symbol for anything in life, because anything that's unexpected, if we're dealing with an illness, whether chronic or if it's an operation that we're going toward, any challenge in life, if we're moving from from being single to being in a couple, if we're getting married, if we're moving jobs, if we're fired, if we're moving apartments, houses, if we are becoming a parent, becoming a grandparent, okay? All these things are big things in life. And there's always going to be the time that we weren't there yet, the time of going in, and then the time of coming back to where we were as a different person. And what I want everyone to try and do before we even dive into the text is I want you to take your finger, okay, patiently, and we're going to try and walk the labyrinth with our finger. I think the easiest one to do is the red one down here, okay? So the entrance is right in the bottom. Can you see it? So we're going to take a moment in silence and really slowly walk with your finger on the path. Okay, and we'll take a moment of silence to do that. All the way in and then all the way out.
For those on Zoom, the study sheet is on the chat.
It's the red one, yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you're done, you can just make some eye contact. And if we had more time, I just don't want to go overboard today. I would ask you what it felt like. And it could be confusing because the eye jumps, you know, from line to line. And it could be, we could be impatient and we could be just wanting to get there. But really, this is a symbol for anything, for any change in life, and also a symbol for what the Jewish calendar does for us, because we enter a new year, and these couple of weeks, you know, the first 2 days are the days of judgment, and then on the 10th day we have the Day of Atonement, which supposedly were on the first 2 days were written in the books, right? Are we going to be written in the book of life, the book of death, in the book of good life? Okay, we pray to be written in the book of life. And then it is believed that on the 10th day, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, our divine signs the books, and that's it. But in Jewish tradition, I think like any tradition, we always have to have a
makeup session.
The makeup session, right? It can't
Grace
ever
period.
just be it. And interestingly enough, it is believed that until Hoshana Rabbah, until this coming Sunday, it is still possible to change the decree. And we'll get to that in a moment. So I collected some texts that bring us the idea of the labyrinth. Now, Pastor Jane, would you be willing to maybe say a few words about the labyrinth in Christian tradition, or how you practice it here in the church?
Well, and I'm not an expert on the labyrinth, but one understanding I have by being part of it, but especially starting in the Middle Ages, was that, or like, yeah, oh, thank you. Can I talk right in here? Here's the lady that's talking. Hey, lady. Okay. What I understand is that during the Crusades, it became very unsafe for people in Europe to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And so labyrinths were created as a way of allowing people to have a symbolic trip to the Holy Land. And then you enter in, and when you get to the center, you've arrived, and then you come back out. So that is one way that we understand it from the Middle Ages. But much like what Rabbi Debi said, now it's used as a walking path, especially if you're going through some kind of transition or you're seeking enlightenment, if you're going through a problem or whatever, and you start at the entrance of the labyrinth and you keep going and kind of go through a process of kind of shedding as you journey towards the center. And the labyrinth, for example, that is outside at our in our garden is a little more complex than this one. So you kind of go forward, and then the path pulls you back down again, and you wonder, like, when am I ever going to get to the middle? Which is always something really important to kind of wrestle with, because all of us want to make a beeline right to the center, and the labyrinth really makes us slow down and realize that the process of getting to the center, getting to the heart of the matter, is much more complicated, and we want to just say yes to that. And then you can get to the center and you can have prayer time, that sort of thing, and then you exit, kind of putting back on your life so that by the time you exit, you have had this enlightening experience and you're ready to go ahead and enter the world. Now, one other really interesting thing about the labyrinth, and Rabbi Debi might say something about this too, is when you're traveling the labyrinth with other people, you're invariably gonna, like, you know, who's going to move ahead, or you're one person's coming out, one person's going in, and you have to kind of negotiate all those kind of things, and usually in silence. So that again is a really interesting thing to examine in your own life. Like when I have impediments to the clear path that I want to take, there's negotiations that I need. It's just all these things you can use to contemplate as you're working through a transition or an issue or something like that. So I'm sure that in a lot of ways that's similar to what Rabbi Debi was going to say.
Thank you.
Or will say.
Yeah.
In her own inimitable way.
And I think it's also interesting to look back at some of our origins, which go back to ancient Greece as well. And the myth about Icarus and Daedalus, the reason why he had to build the wings in the first place is because he was instructed to build a labyrinth in which he was trapped in. So those wings, who then later melted because the sun went too close to the sun, were there in the first place to get out of the labyrinth. So it really also goes back to Greek tradition. And so let's read some of the texts that maybe they're not exactly labyrinth, but they're a way of Jewish tradition, just giving us some kind of ideas of how to look at it. So is anyone willing to read the first text from Midrash Song of Songs Rabbah, which is a commentary on the book Song of Songs? And we're talking about, I think, around 7th century, if I'm not mistaken. It's more of the later Rabbah commentaries. So anyone? It's English. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Naaman said, it's analogous to a large palace in which there were numerous entrances. Everyone who entered strayed from the path of the entrance. They were unable to find the entrance that would take them where they needed to go. One clever man came, took a skein, and put it on half of the entrance. People would enter and exit by means of the skein. So too, until Solomon arose, there was no person who was able to understand matters of Torah. Once Solomon arose, everyone began discoursing regarding matters of Torah.
Thank you. So we have something here that resembles something a little more like a maze than a labyrinth, but we're looking at, our sages have many parables. And here when we say Torah, we mean the Bible, but we really mean the whole codex of law of what it is to live a Jewish life. And by Jewish tradition, King Solomon was the wisest man alive ever. And here is a parable talking about the way he guided people. And I can really imagine that, I guess, I also imagine it as just a ball of yarn, right? A red ball of yarn that you just put and just leading the way. But it can also, I think it can also represent a labyrinth, because in some way, the person who built the labyrinth is already giving us the instructions for life. And this is also, I think, a parable that our sages, you know, the understatements that are here are many. And in many ways, it's you know, the sages writing this are, of course, people who are oppressed, who are not living a free life. So they want to say that we have it right and everyone else has it wrong. So of course, King Solomon is the one that gives us the keys, right, to understanding the world. So it can be a parable on many levels. It could be just about maybe the Torah being a very complicated book, and we needed King Solomon to come and give us, you know, the wisdom how to learn it. But it could also be about the Jewish people showing, you know, the rest of the world how it should be done. Of course, not our theology today, but we can understand where the people writing this are coming from. We're jumping around a little today in terms of timelines, because I found this great description of a really different genre than we're used to, I think, than you guys are used to when you're studying. And we're going all the way to the 18th century, to Italy, okay? And this genre is this is a book called Mesilat Yesharim by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And this is a genre talking about, it's called the Musar in Musar in Hebrew, and it's about strengthening faith and moral excellence. Okay, so there's this whole movement in the 18th century, rabbis starting to write books. You can't say that that's the beginning, because some of it started maybe even earlier with the Maimonides in 12th century. But the idea that Jewish law is not only there to tell you, you know, whether this animal is okay to eat or not, or how many steps you're allowed to walk on the day of Sabbath. It is there for moral excellence. How are you going to be the best human being that you can? And that obviously also connects us to Jewish philosophers and to Jewish mystics as well.
So the title, Mesilat Yesharim, in the English edition that came out, is The Path of the Just. It literally means the path of the straight.
Yeah, so that's Pam's way.
Right, way Pam.
So this is a little long, but if anyone's willing to dive in and start, and then if you want a replacement, we'll be happy to replace you. Wait, so we'll just, here. So Madeline, will just mic you.
Yes, okay. To what is this analogous? To a labyrinth. This is a garden planted for amusement, commonly known to the nobleman. The hedges of plants are arranged into many intricate walls, among them many confusing and interlacing pathways, all of which appear similar. The goal is to reach the lookout tower in the midst of the maze. But among these pathways, some of them truly lead one to the tower, while others deceive him, leading him to stray away from it. One who walks between the paths is not at all capable of seeing or knowing if he is walking along a correct path or a deceptive one, for each one appears similar. There is no noticeable difference whatsoever to the eye beholding them. He will not reach the tower unless he knows the correct path through prior experience and visual familiarity by having entered it before and successfully reached the goal, namely the tower. One standing on the lookout tower, on the other hand, can see all the pathways before him and discern between the true and the false ones. He is in a position to warn those walking in them and tell them, this is the path to take. He that is willing to believe him will reach the designated place. But he who is not willing to believe him, but would rather follow his own eyes, will certainly remain lost and fail to reach it. So too here, one who still has not ruled over his evil inclination is lost in the midst of the pathways and cannot distinguish between them. But those who rule over their evil inclination, who have already reached the tower and left the pathways, and who clearly see all the pathways before their eyes, they can counsel those who are willing to listen. It is these people that we must trust. And what is the counsel they give us? Let us enter into an accounting. Come and consider the accounting of the world, for they already experienced, saw, and learned that this alone is the true path leading a man to the good which he seeks, and that there is none other besides this. The summary of all the matter is that a man must contemplate with his intellect always, at all times, and also during the fixed appointed time of solitude, what is the true path, according to the Torah, that man must walk upon, and afterwards to come to reflect on his own deeds, to ascertain if they are traveling in this path or not. For through this certainty, it will be easy for him to purify himself of all evil and to correct all his ways, as Scripture says, weigh the path of your feet, and all your ways will be established. And let us search and examine our ways, and we will return to God.
Thank you.
Let's just take a moment to ask, we're on Zoom also. Does anybody want to ask something? Hi, we'd like to see if anybody on Zoom, or at least on Facebook with a comment, Zoom in person, would like to ask or comment. Want you to feel you're included in this conversation. Okay.
Okay,
So
well,
let's go ahead.
we'll leave some time. And again, what we have here, in a way, is a maze, right? It's not exactly a labyrinth, but the questions that come to mind here for me are the questions that maybe are equivalent to the question of who created the world and how was the world created? Who put the labyrinth there in the first place, right? Someone had to construct it, someone had to create it, and the ongoing question, what in our lives is humankind made and what is God made, and how do we differentiate, and how it is do we go through life? Do we, with our own truth? And is there at all a way to find out one's own truth without being in contact with other human beings? I believe that unfortunately we cannot do that without being in contact with other human beings. It could be really easy to walk the labyrinth alone. But most life, we do have to interact with other human beings. And how do we do that? Because when we have our interaction with our higher power, and we have our interaction with our fellow human beings, and they have to come together. And in many ways, that is what being born is all about. Being born is a collaboration of humankind being able to reproduce, is that how you say it? But also of something that is unknown. Even with our medicine today, we don't always know exactly what's going on in the uterus. We're not able to do the magic, the miracles by ourselves. And even with our medicine today, 1 of every 4 pregnancies is not going to give a living child. It's not going to be born out of it. Okay. And so it even brings us closer to not taking it for granted. And if we go back to the Jewish time of year that we're at, we're thinking about this maze or this place, or what is this tower that we're going to? And the finishing verse that is quoted here from the book of Eicha is really Lamentations, that is really the idea that these days, the days of atonement, are really the days of returning. In Hebrew, it's called the Hebrew word is Tshuvah. It can also be answer, but it can also be returning. And we ask, what do we return to? And there are many answers, and a few of them are we're returning to God, as the book of Lamentations says, but we're also returning to ourselves, to our inner truth, to our inner core, to what it is we are supposed to be doing on this planet. And we all have gifts to give. It's not always clear what it is, the gift that we're supposed to be giving now. And sometimes we make mistakes. It's not always so clear. But when we do know, we're in our element and we know that we're doing what it is that we're supposed to do. And the labyrinth is the idea that we're able to go on numerous and never-ending ins and outs. It's not a linear path. Yeah.
Eileen says, life is a journey and we don't always think or know the right path, but all of our experiences.
Give input into what path we choose, a very powerful image.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I agree. So one of the interesting things is the verse I brought from the book of Psalms that we just sang and we'll sing again later. My feet have held to your paths, my legs have not given way. The Hebrew word for path is ma'agelotecha, okay? And the the root is ma'agal. It's the same root as circle. And that I think is very interesting. And it brings me this I learned from my teacher, forgot her last name, Esther. She teaches me Bible in Jerusalem. And she reminded me of this verse to remember that pathways are connected to circles and to going around. And this brings us to the labyrinth and to the other side of our page. And one interesting thing is that we have drawings. These are called Jericho labyrinths because they represent the city of Jericho. Now, one interesting thing is that Jericho labyrinths appear in Christian and in Jewish tradition. And what appears here is Jericho in the middle. We have 3 examples, but there are a lot of other examples. And I'll send you a short article through Rabbi David later on if anyone wants to read further, because we're not going to be able to say everything about it. But what's interesting here is that the city of Jericho has 7 walls. Now, if we go back to the book of Joshua, we hear about the city of Jericho that needs to be conquered. Now, the first time we hear about the city of Jericho is the spies, right? The Israelite spies going in, meeting the woman Rachav, who lives on the wall, okay? And in these drawings, in the red one, you can see a little house on the left. Okay, that's the house of Rachav. And why is it drawn here, right near the wall? Because she hides them, and she also helps them escape through her house, and they make a promise. When the Israelites are going to come and conquer the city of Jericho, she is going to be leaving a red thread at her window, so they know not to destroy her house and to save her and all of her family. Okay? And then later on, we hear about Joshua and all this was in Joshua chapter 2. But then when we go to Joshua chapter 6, we hear about the Israelites led by Joshua, making all around the city, 1 round each day, and then 7 rounds on the 7th day, which makes me think, what did they do on Shabbat, right? And they were blowing the trumpets on those days, each day. And the number 7 appears. You need 7 of this and 7 of that. And at the 7th day, after the 7th round, what happened? The city of Jericho, the wall fell. Now, does the book of Joshua say that the city of Jericho had 7 walls? No, but later commentaries do. And our friend, which I'm sure Rabbi David, I know he likes him very much, Rabbi Eliezer from Worms, at Sefer HaRokeach from the 13th century in Germany, right? He says, why do we at Hoshana Rabbah, which is the last day of the holiday of Tabernacles, is that how we call it? Or booths. Sukkot, which we're celebrating as we're speaking now. Why do we make 7 rounds around the equivalent of the altar, right, of the bima? And he says it's to remember the 7 rounds around the city of Jericho. And in my opinion, it all, comes together. So the day of Hoshana Rabbah, the last day of this holiday, is the day where, the makeup session, right, where we can still change. Our fate can still be changed. But really, and I think this is what I learned from Jewish tradition, there's always another makeup session. And our sages tell us, you need to make Tshuvah, you need to return every day of your life, because you don't know when the last day of your life is going to be. So we return to God and we return to ourselves every day. And I'll just say about one of these, this one that you see, the printed one here, okay? This labyrinth is from a book called Sefer Zikaron B'Yerushalayim, a memorial book that cites, talks about the different sacred sites in the land of Israel. This was printed at 1743 in Istanbul. And if you've been studying with Rabbi David, you know the William Gross collection, and this is from this collection. And what you can see on the bottom, what can you see there in the middle, right underneath the labyrinth? Blowing the trumpets, right? Blowing the shofar. So what I want to suggest is bringing everything that we saw today together with one more thing. Our last citation from the Mishnah, from that same codex of laws that I was talking about from the first 2 centuries. Can anyone read this for us? I'll just, before that, the sages are talking about how do we know that that the Day of Atonement went well, okay? That everything is okay, and and God has forgiven us for all our sins. And this is the last thing they suggest, okay? Rabbi Ishmael says, didn't they have a different indicator, okay, to the other ones? There was a strip of crimson tied to the entrance to the sanctuary, right? The Holy of Holies, which the high priest went into only once a year on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement. And when the goat that they sent out to the wilderness reached the wilderness, and the mitzvah was fulfilled, the commandment was fulfilled, the strip would turn white, okay? As it is stated, though your sins be as scarlet, they will become white as snow. How do we know?
How do we know that we've been expiated or we've been atoned for?
Atoned for? This is what would happen. And I go back to that same red string that Rachav, the woman, left on her wall to be saved. And I go back to that same ball of yarn that was left in the entrance to the maze so people could find their way. And I'm sending the ball of yarn back to you guys and really inviting us and let me know. I would like to go out to the labyrinth if that's possible. I don't know if we can take the whole tech with us. Is that possible? And so just to tie things together, we began with the shofar and went through it from the womb like a birthing canal. And the labyrinth is also in many ways like a womb, when we go in and we go out, okay? And there's a big question. If we're going through transition, when is it that the transition is over? When are we new? When have we, when are we back to ourselves? Is there a back to ourselves? I talk about it a lot when I talk with with women who've given birth. We're not talking about going back to the same jeans that you wore before pregnancy. We're talking about something else. And what does that mean? And that is part of the voyage that we're all so fortunate to be able to go on, just for being alive and just for being born. So what we're going to do now is would you like to ask something? Yeah.
Are all labyrinth round?
That's a good question. No, there are square ones as well. You can Google Labyrinth and see there's shapes and complexities. And what Reverend Jane said, which is correct, is that the feeling is that you're not going straight to the middle. That's what connects all of them together. Sometimes you're going on the path, and sometimes it seems like you're going far away, and you need to trust.
I must be going the wrong way.
Right. Yeah.
You'll find that this labyrinth is more complex. It's divided into quadrants. So you'll come up about halfway up, and then you'll come about halfway up, and then you'll be going this way, and then you have to go back down, and you're like, where the heck am I going? And then you're going all the way around here, and then part way, and then up here, and then back down, and you're like, I must be lost. And you just have to trust the path, and just like, again, explore yourself as you struggle with like not trusting the path, and ask God for help in trusting the path, and or watch other people. It's all that sort of thing. But you'll notice that you'll probably say like, this is much different than the one where I could just go around the circle and circle, because it's going to be a little more challenging than that. But cool, very cool.
Thank you.
Journey.
So, yeah.
Sometimes it seems like you're going backwards. And like you're going backwards before you can go forward again.
Yes.
That's
Definitely.
so much that life is like.
Right. And sometimes you only know that you're going backwards after you went forward after going backwards, right?
And then you encounter other people on your journey, like, leave me alone. I'm on my own trip. You're interfering with my stuff, and it's like, how often is that true in our life? So.
Right. Any other comments, questions?
Well, it is funny that I thought this bottom one was a Christmas lamp.
Ah,
Oh, look, a little house there decorated for Christmas.
exactly. It says House of Rachav.
And you straightened me right out. Now I know.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. It says House of Rachav the prostitute right there. Yeah, in Hebrew letters.
Now I know.
Anyone else? Anyone from home?
I have a comment that, no, I don't, your question is pretty key to me, is that how do you know things are different after you've had this transition? And I think some people can just worship and do the same thing and go, let's say I did my pretty, but it's the redirection, refocusing. Am I renewed? It's asking yourself questions about, how have I gone through this experience? Am I enriched? Am I growing closer, an intimate relationship with God? And I think that that's what we're striving for. And otherwise, it'll just be rote. Oh, we did it, the holidays over, let's move on. And I think that's something to really respond to.
Yes, definitely. And I believe it's a day-to-day practice. It's hard to feel like you're going through a transition in these very dramatic days that we have in our holidays if we're not doing the day-to-day work. And it's really hard to do the day-to-day work. And that's why in the beginning, I didn't really like what we just read about the source number 3, about having guidance, that you need that person on the tower. But we really sometimes do need a person who's already gone through something to just, mirror for us and just not be there by ourselves. It doesn't mean that we're not going to speak our truth. It just means that sometimes we need another person to go through the way. You wanted to say something.
From my somewhat limited experience walking Labyrinth, the thing that is most notable for me of the experience, especially would be true here, and I've never walked this one, is that every time you turn, you're facing
in a new direction. And you really feel that in your body, that and you've got very familiar mountains all around you here. So as you move, you're constantly, when you make these bends, these 180-degree bends, then you're facing a new direction. And so in the journey, for what all it represents, there really is a sense of repentance, a sense of new season, and you're looking in a totally different direction, even though you're moving toward the same end.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you. Yes. So maybe we'll have one last comment and then we can go and walk.
I think it's interesting that they use the term a skein. I'm a knitter, and we refer to our yarn as a skein of yarn. And what do we do with that yarn? We create things. That was my thought on it.
Yeah, definitely. The light has to be knitted and it has to be weaved.
Yeah, class. This way the people at home can hear you.
Rabbi Debi, you spoke in the beginning about one of your missions is to bring God into the birthing room. Is this the kind of material you discuss with expecting mothers?
Definitely, yeah. These are the things that I do.
And they're not too, let's say, too much in agony to really discuss this, or?
Well, I'm not at what I do is preparation. I've not qualified myself yet to be in the birthing room with them. That's what I'm working on now. I'm studying a course now. So by the end of this year, I will be starting to accompany births, but not yet. But the whole idea is, how do we take these ideas and use them as preparation? So that, right. So I don't know if I'm the lady in the tower, but I mean, but I'm there to show what it is that we have, to show this the spectrum of what we have to offer in Jewish tradition and other traditions as well.
I also think that if Debbie blows the shofar when they're in the birthing room, they'll do it quicker. They'll get it done. Roberta, maybe this will be the last comment.
I've always thought that the labyrinth or the maze or whatever is a method of calming, so that this could be something that the mother in beginning labor might do to distract her from what's happening. And it's supposed to be, I think, a calming and
Definitely.
going to a more peaceful when you're agitated or upset.
Definitely.
Is that
It's very central.
is that the tradition in which this labyrinth was created?
Well, it definitely, you have to slow down. You know, to travel this labyrinth, you definitely have to slow down, and can't just, because you'll get lost on the. Yes, and it's based on the design of the labyrinth at the cathedral in Chartres, France, which is what a lot of labyrinths in the US are based on, that particular model. And it's kind of funky and funny about the story of that labyrinth. It's a large, it's embedded in the rocks in the floor of the cathedral in Chartres. And some lady was kind of like, she was looking for labyrinths, she's kind of into this, and she's like, I've heard that there's this great one. It was several years ago at Chartres. And she went to the cathedral and she was looking, because she's on the floor, like, where is it? And there was a part of the cathedral where there are all these chairs. And she looked, and like she could see, oh my gosh, it's right there, but they've been just using it to sit on, just an extra part of the cathedral. So when they took out the chairs, they found this beautiful labyrinth. And that is the one that many churches will use as their design for the thing. So that's it reminds me of the piper and the prince and the pauper, and he's using the royal thing to crack nuts because he doesn't know how to do it because he's just a pauper. Anyway, it's kind of like that. Anyway.
So what I want to suggest now, if you feel comfortable joining us, Reverend Jane, I think that the best way, I think we'll walk it all together, right? I don't think we're going to go each one doing
No,
it
no, I
by
think you
ourselves?
should, the way you do it, and unfortunately, Paul and I have a meeting, so we're gonna have to split, but
Okay,
what you want to do is you want to, a person starts and then give them a little bit of time, and then the next person starts.
So
So
that's
it's, you're
all-
like a little bit at a time.
right. And then when we're all done and back, we'll stand in a circle and we'll be blowing the
Oh,
shofar.
fantastic.
And so we'll be mirroring the Jericho Labyrinth
Yeah.
here and praying for whatever way it is that we want to go back to ourselves.
So
to God.
marvelous.
And thank you, everyone, also from home and also here for participating.
Yes, if you've never walked a labyrinth, it really, I love, Labyrinth Walk is awesome. And
And typically it's done very slowly, one
Yes.
step at a time.
Mhm.
Here we may be faster, which is perfect. Very meditative,
yes,
very slow.
and you're welcome to come anytime if you want to come and watch the labyrinth. You can see Pam in the office. and we'll-
Yeah,
we
there's
keep
a
it
lock
going.
on the door, but I'm happy to unlock it. Rabbi?
Yeah, no, Madelina, leave it on or should I leave it on?
In case you want to say something.
Yeah, I think we can come back. We're gonna blow it out there. If I can bring a chair, if there's anyone that wants to sit there.
We've got a meeting at 4. This was just so great. So I guess next time you're in town, let's get together for lunch or whatever. And just hearing you talk, it's like, oh, I really want to get back to Jerusalem.
And you'll come up to
And they'll come.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, Paul and I are looking to make.
Are we still on?
Yalla.
Super fun. But anyway, this was just great. Thank you so much. And Pam's gonna take a few photos.
That's great. Thanks for that. Klaus, can I bring a chair for you over there? Or are you good?
I don't want you to have to carry.
No, that's fine. It's not a problem. Look, it's not a problem at all.
Thank you very much.
You're very, very
No.
welcome.
The young lady is gonna bring it.
Reading a lot about the experiences of
You need your strength for
the
the
wisdom
Tshuvah
figure of the female. That's more what your daughter was talking about, the combination of the male and female. It's called Sophia.
It's similar to that. In the Middle Ages, they don't call it Sophia.
Oh.
The Jewish tradition is not. The tradition is it's broken down into different parts of the spheres. I don't know a lot about this,
Oh,
but
they said it
there's,
was Jewish in the first century.
well, Sophia is a Greek term for, but the embodiment. You mean Sophia is the embodiment, the feminine embodiment.
Yes.
So that's necessary. That's only reason I thought perhaps it was Greek.
The
No.
Christians later. From this rabbi I was reading.
Oh, okay. It could very well be. Not my expertise. Yeah. The beginning is here, right?
Mhm.
רוצה להיות ראשון?
Okay. I guess.
Are you gonna walk? Okay, great. So Rabbi's gonna go first and
I hope I do this right.
you'll just go on the path.
Oh, okay.
So wait a moment, you have to go where there's an opening.
Right. Okay. Go. I'll let you wait a moment for her to walk a little and then I'll.
Ones have been beautiful, they've been done with art, art.
There's
And-
so many. It could be done by mosaic.
Usually Wednesday is the
Yeah, we only get to do this.
Maybe you should get half the chair.
It's in the lap.
Now you're talking.
You gonna walk?
I think I'm going to.
Go.
I've been a little like it.
Okay.
address is that? I think you get almost to the middle. Granddaughter's planned parenthood. Before that, she worked at Mary
Somebody had to have a
Center, delivering diet. Then she became a midwife. Very interesting.
I'm sure it is. Are you gonna walk?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will go.
Where you're going. You can't really think about anything.
That's it. It's about agreeing to be on the way.
Yeah.
It's about agreeing to be present. You don't want? You want?
I think important to remember what
don't
Paul
want to?
said about looking up and seeing what we're facing
walk?
instead of just looking down.
Okay. Okay.
The bricklayer must have been really.
I love you.
Thank you.
So I assume once you get to the middle, you just backtrack the whole thing.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we'll.
Perhaps I think we'll just all
Yeah.
meet at the middle, or
Okay.
so we're all almost at the middle. And if anyone maybe wants to join us under, even if you haven't walked the whole labyrinth, if you would like to join us under the tree.
You're almost there, Ella. עוד קצת. עד כמעט שם. זהו? עוד טיפה, עוד קצת פנייה ימינה. הנה הגעת. ארץ מחוזתך. There, you touch the tree. Now you're safe. Now you're safe. You can't get you. It's like a kid's game. You know, you say, remember.
I was getting a little busy.
Well, you're gonna take the shortcut.
May the God of our ancestors bless us all in the path back to ourselves every day, as many times a day as we need, every year, back to ourselves, back to our higher powers, back to our strength. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Very good.
Us to do this. So you've obviously done this before, right? This is and it should take much longer.
San Francisco?
Very meditative.
You're flying from San
Yeah.
It's hard to
Oh,
look that
that's
way.
a nice.
Yeah.
So you're flying from.
Yeah, I
San
think it's something I'd like to come back and do. So usually it's locked, the gate is locked.
It's generally, but